recognized in the U.S.? If this is the case, then why do 35% of all Hispanic youth live in poverty, according to the U.S. Census Bureau? Also, why are Hispanic residents in Arizona being harassed due to racial profiling by U.S. sheriffs? And why has recent Republican County Commissioner Blaine Young passed legislation that makes English the official language of Frederick County, not considering that in the past 10 years, the Hispanic population in Frederick County has increased 267% to about 15,000 immigrants? How do you plan on facing that if you were to take office and the equality that all human beings are endowed to live in the United States?
Let me ask you a question. In the areas where people are, where 35% of the population is in poverty, are people migrating in from Mexico and Guatemala and El Salvador, or are they migrating out? Does it turn out that being in poverty in the U.S. may be better than being in poverty in Guatemala or Honduras or El Salvador or Mexico?
Well, considering that this 35% is represented by income of households that have youth, and these youth have no control over whether they're migrating or not, and the fact that immigration isn't just coming from Mexico, Guatemala, and El Salvador, and that these children are tied to these immigration flows, which are out of their control because they're minors, and it's happening right in places such as Baltimore County.
So my first question for you, though, is it is conceivable, and I think most people would actually agree, that being relatively poor in America is better than being relatively poor in large parts of the world. I'm not arguing for it. Let's be clear about the comparison. I would love to end poverty in America. I think it's a very important goal of ours to recognize that the right to pursue happiness belongs to every American of every background, and that we ought to also recognize that many of the institutions liberals cherish the most, such as unionized schools, are in fact a major impediment. And I would argue, frankly, that applying the current minimum wage to people who are 15 or 16 with limited skills guarantees they don't get hired, which is why in this economy under this president, you have 43% black teenage unemployment in the United States. You have very high Hispanic teenage unemployment. One of the first goals of getting out of poverty is to get people to get jobs. And yet when I proposed the other day that we find ways to employ kids to get them their very first job, you would be surprised how shocked liberals were at the idea that you'd actually want these kids to work. And how big an argument I got into over having them work. I think, for example, let me use the classic example that people on the left attack. I think working at McDonald's as your first job beats not working at all, because you actually learn to show up, you learn to make change, you learn to work with the team, you learn to pay attention to the customer, and your second job gets to be better. Now that's the opposite of the left's approach to poverty. I would argue that we ought to have a job-oriented approach to maximize eliminating poverty in America, and I agree with you. In terms of English as the official language of government, I am for it. You have 90%. Because in Miami-Dade College, you have 94 different languages spoken. In Cook County, Chicago, you have over 200 languages spoken. The only common unifying language in the United States is English. That is an objective fact. And it's a fact that if you're in Minnesota, where there's a fairly large Hmong population, for example, or you're in Des Moines, Iowa, where there's a fairly large Vietnamese population, you may favor Hispanics, and you may think the Spanish is automatically the second language or the equal language. The fact is, for all of these different migrants of all of these different, there's 600,000 Koreans in Los Angeles. Now they have the opportunity to be integrated into the economy at large by learning a commercial language which maximizes their chance of getting a job. And that's why I favor learning English. And again, I'm not against other languages. I have a PhD in European history. I get it. But I am in favor, and my daughter lives in Key Biscayne and is fluent in Spanish. But I believe that as a unifying thing for young people, I would say to them, the sooner you learn how to speak English well enough to get a job, the faster you're going to rise in America, and the more money you're likely to make over your working lifetime.
I have two questions. The first one's just a quick yes or no question, just for me, like something when I'm voting for a president, something I just like to know.